Right, so we are going to do a review of the lecture that was done the other evening, our contact session. For some other weird reason, it logged me out midway and then decided to discard my recording. So here we go. And essentially what we looked at is we started looking at chapter 6. And there was quite a bit of discussion that took place that I'm quite grateful for in terms of workplace and non-workplace stresses, and I asked for some examples of first workplace stresses and then non-workplace stresses. And in terms of the workplace stresses, some of the things that were mentioned were time constraints, workload being excessive, colleagues causing frustration because your work is dependent on what they are producing. And then we also talked about just general workplace conflict in terms of how tasks should be done and all of that. And it's important to understand that when we have these stresses in the workplace, it will affect things like productivity. So if I have too little time to do something, if I'm doing and working on a task and that specific task is taking up a lot of my time, that means that it's going to potentially impact other tasks that I'm supposed to do. It might also be that I end up rushing the task to such a degree to get it done because of a deadline that I end up providing poor work just to make sure I get the job done. The quality not matching. Colleagues in the workplace and differing values, different ways of doing things, different work ethics. I've seen that a lot, and it was mentioned that you are working with people that do not necessarily think the way you do, they don't necessarily work the way you do, and that can cause frustration, that can cause stress. The tasks potentially being too demanding that you don't necessarily have the skills to do the tasks, or you have to assign tasks to people, but you know that they are not actually fully able to do those tasks, but the instruction is give it to that person, and then you have to unfortunately comply. As long as it's a valid instruction, you need to do that. Just generally the work environment, I spoke about Kariga and or formerly Uitenhage, the Goodyear factory that's closing down here, and how job security is potentially a major stressor in the workplace, because especially in South Africa, we are sitting with an economy that's not doing well. And what is happening a lot is that people are not securing permanent employment. They've got contract work, which causes stress because you never quite know how long the contract is going to be extended for, if the contract's going to be extended. So you might be there for 3 months or 6 months or a year, and you do not know, do I have a job after that? Do I start looking for another job? And it's not necessarily something you can ask your managers or your superiors. Oh, by the way, are you going to renew my They don't know necessarily, or just it's an awkward question. Honest answer. With Kariga, what's happening is 900 jobs are being lost, and because they're closing the Goodyear factory, and the Goodyear factory has been around forever, and obviously very, very, very close to it, I can almost say neighbors, is Volkswagen. So Volkswagen used to use Goodyear for their tires. Now they're going to have to source tires elsewhere. And so for the folk working at Goodyear, that's 900 plus people that are losing their jobs. And if you know the area, Uitenhage is a very poor area. It's not a town that can actually afford the job losses, and the entire town actually it's built on the automotive industry. That's sort of what's the town is all about. So a lot of people living in Uitenhage actually work at one of the automotive partners, if I can call it that, because you've got Volkswagen, but then you also have a couple of other companies, including Goodyear, that all service Volkswagen. So that for that little town, that is a major I don't want to say disaster is potentially a bit dramatic, but essentially it's a disaster for the little town. And also, I mean, there's a lot of people that live in Gqeberha, which is formerly Port Elizabeth, that used to work at Goodyear as well, and they would drive through. So they're all now sitting minus jobs, and it's not exactly like you can just leap into another job. We know jobs are extremely scarce. We've got extremely high unemployment, especially here in the Eastern Cape. Our employment numbers are not looking good. So that's a huge thing. And the worst part about it was that there was a lot of talk about it beforehand. So these people were literally at work every day with this sword hanging over their head, their job. Am I going to have a job, yes or no? So yeah, they're busy trying to see if they can somehow rescue something of the business. The rumors are, but we're not really getting proper information at this point, but it sounds like they're trying to do it. And I'm assuming then they're going to retain the staff or trying to retain as much of the staff as possible. But yeah, it's economically things don't look good. Another example now, Trump with his tariffs. They're now putting in desperate measures to try and keep the city of East London going, because East London, where Volkswagen is essentially um, the heartbeat, if I could put it that way, of Uitenhage or Kariga, Mercedes, that's the heartbeat of East London. And you've got a port there and a whole bunch of other things. So all of that essentially was built around the fact that we've got a Mercedes-Benz factory there, Mercedes factory there. So there's a lot of especially job uncertainty and lack of job security that's hanging around the Eastern Cape at the moment, and in all fairness elsewhere. And that causes major issues, and you can't expect people that are not sure whether or not they are going to have a job a month from now, a week from now, to be productive. It's going to impact on that. It's going to impact on the quality of their work. So yeah, that's probably the biggest stressor we see currently in the country in terms of workplace stress. Then in terms of non-workplace stress, if we believe that we go into work and we leave everything that's not from well, we leave our circumstances behind us, that's a farce. If you're worried about your child, if you're worried about your husband or your wife, if there's something wrong at home, if there's something wrong in your family or your friendship group or something, you take that to work. If there's a health issue, you take that to work. And again, that will impact your productivity. It'll impact the quality of your work. And it's easy to say, oh, but act professionally while you're at work. But we're human beings. We can't just shut off what's happening elsewhere. And that's something important to remember. So I also had the discussion in terms of what makes a group or a team unique, and it came up that firstly, you're sitting with different people with different skill sets, with different personalities, different cultures, different values, potentially different home languages, uh, different ages, religion. And the moment that you do that, and that's what makes HR so interesting, that's what makes work life so interesting, and that's especially what makes South Africa so interesting, because of the number of different languages we've got and the cultures we've got. it's both a strength and a weakness, because if we do not manage that correctly, that becomes a problem. And we know that in a workplace, the idea is that as a workplace, people in that work team share the same values in terms of how to get things done and so forth. And it's important for managers and team leaders to cultivate that. Our value system, our cultural system, how we do things, expectations are going to differ depending on how we were raised, our own background, our own experiences. But once we are working as a team, we need to understand that there's a common goal that we need to strive towards. And that regardless of where we come from and who we are, we still, as a team, put those differences aside and focus on the goals, the values of the team, of the organization that we're working for. And I guess the Springboks would be a good example here in terms of and what's that slogan that they keep out tossing out? No DNA, just RSA. And that for me is such a lovely thing, because it's basically, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. We're all in this country. We're all in this together. And if we can foster that in a work environment, then that team is going to quite likely flourish. That organization is quite likely going to flourish. I'll put up an article, I'm thinking about it now, of Southwest Airlines that has an absolutely fantastic workplace culture. And their entire culture is based on something, another discipline, another area of study in industrial psychology called positive organizational psychology. And it's gained a lot of traction in the last 10 years or so in terms of how we manage the workplace and how we manage workplace teams in order to create a positive, productive work environment. So I'm going to actually put the Southwest Airlines case study, I'm going to put on for you guys for additional reading. It's actually quite interesting to see their whole philosophy about work and how they do things. And also, I think tied to that, I think it's the Hilton. I'll just double check. But the way that they run their business as well, very unique and very tied to this. So I'll put those up for you to read, and you can sort of see how organizations turn diversity in the organization into a positive and a driving force for the organization. Now, when we look at types of teams that we've got in the workplace, we have cross-functional, functional, project, self-directed teams, virtual or remote teams, management, and then human-machine fused teams. So if we look at cross-functional teams, essentially we're looking at people that work in different departments or different functions in the organization that come together to form a team. And we need to realize that at the end of the day, the organization as a whole has a goal. And the different departments, the different functions inside the organization must work together to allow the organization to fulfill that goal. And if that's not happening, if one team drops the ball, the organization is not going to do as well as it should. And we often see that if we're coming up with marketing strategies, or we're coming up with product strategies, we'll see people have to work together in order to come up with ideas. So the marketing team might, for instance, approach the IT team and say, listen, we're looking at social marketing campaigns. Can you assist us with, let's say now we want to do some recordings and things, and we need to edit the videos. Do you have somebody in your IT department that can provide us with the software to do so? Or we need specific software in the financial department to help us with payroll. You guys are the IT experts. Can you assist us in terms of looking at the computers that we have at the moment, the hardware, and the whole IT infrastructure of the organization. Could you guys help us out in terms of finding a suitable financial software package to help us in terms of our accounting processes and so forth? So that's a cross-functional team. People from different functions or departments have to work together. Then a functional team is a more permanent thing, whereas cross-functional can be a temporary thing. Functional teams are more permanent, and essentially that's people in a specific department that are working together. So your HR department or your marketing department, finance department, logistics. They have similar competencies. They're all equipped in HR in some shape, way, or form, or logistics or marketing, IT, or whatever, and they work together to get the functions of that department done. Then a project. So a project is usually something that is of temporary nature. It's a specific issue that you're trying to address. So you are wanting to add an additional building, or you want to retrofit the paint shop in your automotive company. Or if you're a catering business, you want to modernize the kitchen or whatever the case might be. And here we need a team of multidisciplinary people to come in and assist. So you can think for yourself, if you are doing any construction work, you've got plumbers, you've got electricians, you've got people that must run the finances, you need health and safety people, you need the actual builders, you need architects. There's a whole bunch of people with different skills that must come in. If there are legal requirements, I know with health care facilities, for instance, there are legal requirements in terms of how certain things must be done, what in terms of how the software, the security on the software. Finance and would be the same. There's best practices for how you set up an operating theater, for instance. So you will need people that have the relevant skills and knowledge in various capacities, whether it's the construction or the painting or the color choice or the layout or whatever, to come together to fulfill this project. Self-directed teams. So here we as a team, we run ourselves. We decide what tasks we do. We determine when it's done, how it's done. We can come up with some sort of structure for rewarding people. So do we have like every Friday we have a cake day, or if somebody does a really good job, we vote for an employee of the week or something similar. We put a photograph of them up. We give them a nice bunch of flowers, or I don't know, what do you get a male person, gift voucher or something. We are responsible for our own quality control. And the idea here is that because we know how this task must be done, we are able to do this task and manage ourselves in terms of doing this task. We're not relying on somebody else coming in that might not know how the function works or whatever. Then virtual remote teams. So these are people from different countries or provinces that work together. And with the internet being the way that it is now, we've got fast fiber, we've got tools like Zoom and Skype and Microsoft Teams and so forth. We can facilitate that. You were not able to easily facilitate that in the past. You had to physically go to that location. We can do that now. I've got, for instance, a friend whose husband works for an Australian company. He's based here in South Africa, but he works for an Australian company. And you see more and more of these jobs also advertised in LinkedIn. So go and have a look at LinkedIn. They advertise more and more of these types of jobs. So it's becoming more and more commonplace. Then management, obviously that's supervisors or team leaders, management at various levels. They form their own teams because they have ways of doing things. They have regulations, standards, and so forth that they need to adhere to. And then lastly, human-machine fused teams, where people have to work together with either AI or robotics or robots to get the task done. We see now more and more that surgeons actually use robots to perform surgery, or use artificial intelligence to assist with diagnosis. My father had a lesion on his, or not a lesion, a growth on his face, and he had to go in to see a skin specialist for it. And he was just telling me it's like absolutely amazing. They take a photograph, and the AI actually gives the surgeon, confirms what the surgeon suspects. Is it skin cancer or is it not skin cancer? And he was actually saying to me that there was a gentleman that as I was going to fetch my father, there was a gentleman that came out and he had this massive bandage over his nose. And my father actually asked me, did you see the guy that came out? I'm like, yeah, with a big bandage. He's like, yes. He's like, you won't believe it. So what happened was he came in to have the mold that he had on his nose removed, and they sent it off to pathology. And pathology ran it through a computer system, and the computer system could actually tell them, listen, you did not get enough of the mole area. You should have removed a bit more skin, an area around the mole. You didn't get enough. So they called him back so that they could remove the sufficient amount, the correct amount of tissue from around the mole to make sure that there are no issues, that the entire growth has and cancerous area has been removed. And that's an example of human machine fused teams. And that's also, again, becoming more and more commonplace. Ooh, apologies for that. It's becoming more and more commonplace as artificial intelligence. Remember, we train artificial intelligence. As artificial intelligence becomes better trained and becomes more knowledgeable, robots in a factory like Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, they actually use robots to do some of the welding. So that is a person that works together with a machine to get the welding done. So again, yeah, the technology has progressed to such a degree that this is now actually properly possible. Last thing that we looked at was the challenges with regards to virtual teams. And obviously the big thing's distance. And this was something that came up in the discussion. And I actually said that my friends whose husband works for the Australian company, the problem is he needs to work in Australian time. So that he now needs to adjust to that. So there's time differences. Technological differences is also a big challenge here sometimes, because as I now saw with this team recording, where suddenly I got booted out halfway and then the recording's gone. Technology does not always play along. There are hitches with technology, and that impacts then performance. So I couldn't get this recording to you as fast as I wanted to because there is no recording to do. I have to redo the recording. We need to make sure people are using the correct and the same software. The time differences, as I said, Australia versus here, fairly big difference. Not such a big difference if you're in Europe, but big difference between a place like America, a place like Australia, and us. Physically, we are social beings. We actually do want the physical contact, the physical interaction. And with virtual teams, we do not have that. And I mentioned in class the one thing that, I mean, I love in engaging with you guys in the online sessions, but there's something missing in the sense that I can't see you in front of me. I can't see your facial expressions. I can't see, do you actually understand or do you not understand? And then I also made the joke of, I don't necessarily know if everybody's in the class. And I mean, that kind of happened. I gave the example in COVID where all the restaurants and things were closed. And when McDonald's opened up, I had all these people that were logged into my virtual online lecture from the IT guys side. But then when I was starting to ask questions, I realized they actually not sitting in front of their computers. And then it turned out that they'd all gone to stand in the queue at McDonald's to get a Big Mac or a bunch of them, not everybody. So you don't know if people are in fact behind the screen. The engagement isn't quite the same as the physical and face-to-face interaction. And that's something that's a bit of a negative in terms of the virtual teams. But that said, all of a sudden, because we have this ability now to work with different people from all over, you are expanding your knowledge base, you're expanding your frame of reference. Because I can now get input from people that are in different countries that I've never been to, that I don't know how they do things there, but I can now learn from them and they can learn from me. So yeah, it's got its positive aspects and it's got its negative aspects, and at the end of the day we need to decide, um, is a virtual work environment suited to what we want to do, or is it not? All right, so that's pretty much where I stopped the lecture. It's a lot shorter now than it was when we did it, because obviously there was a lot of chat and interaction. I will put up a video on chapter 7 as well. We didn't actually get to chapter 7, but I'll put up a video for that. And yeah, thank you for your patience in terms of this, and I will keep you up to date in terms of when the chapter 7 recording is done, and also I will post those case studies as promised. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys have a fantastic week.